But as a poll here, how many people are developers versus security people? Hold your hand up if you're a developer. Yeah. Developers for security people, or Paul put his hand up. You're a security person, you don't work in a dev team? Oh. Okay, well that's fantastic. I conclude this, right? My wife told me to read that book years ago. I never bothered. I'll probably get home tomorrow and find I'm from Mars or something, I don't know. So I think this is so true, right? It's like there's a massive gap between the things that software developers care about and the things that necessarily security people care about, and it shouldn't be the case. But I'm pleased to say that's not the case at Microsoft, which is one of the compelling reasons why I came on board. But what I find really strange about this whole web application security space, and I'm not talking about the application security space like, you know, Howler and FX and David Tell, all this sort of stuff. I'm talking about the web app type space here. But you know, I really find it strange that there's people giving advice about how to build enterprise web apps who have never written web apps. They've come from a network space and they understand HTTP and they tell you all this advice about how to deal with it. And it's kind of concerning. But it's definitely true. And there's a lot of people who really understand HTTP very well, and that's absolutely fantastic. But they're giving advice about how to build enterprise web application architectures, and the stuff just wouldn't scale. So I can give you examples of when I've worked in financial services companies before. You know, people have said, hey, you've got to build a web application firewall. There was one vendor who came into us and said, hey, you want to use our web application firewall? It's going to solve all your problems. I kind of tempered them. It's like, okay, tell me about it. Oh, we've got this fantastic throughput. It's absolutely brilliant. Look, here it is. We do this amount of throughput. Their throughput was 3% of my market open weight. So 97% of my customers could never have been able to log in. It's just crazy. You can't apply the same kind of skill set. And this is probably a little bit controversial, but you know, when Paul sent me the invite to come and talk at this, one of the things I thought was fantastic about the invite was, I don't want loads of cross-site scripting talks. They were brilliant, because it's so true. Everyone's just talking about cross-site scripting, new ways to do cross-site scripting. If you sit on the other side from a CISO and you care and you've got a big e-commerce infrastructure, the stuff you care about is the $1 trillion sat behind you, not the attack on the single one of your customer users. You know, it's a harsh reality of life. I'm not saying that cross-site scripting is not a problem. I'm not saying that everyone should care about every one of their customers. Of course they could. But we've got to prioritize stuff in life, right? And the harsh reality for me about a decade into doing all of this stuff was sitting down with people and understanding that, you know, security is a dim second cousin in many places to performance and functionality. And it's the reality, in my opinion. It's a sad reality. I would love to see it the other way around, but most developers care about functionality and performance first and security last. And they'll give you the argument that if the application doesn't have all the right functionality, no one's going to buy it, whether it's secure or insecure. It's a pretty tough argument to kind of counter, really. So, one of the things that drives me mad about the industry is I think there's a whole bunch of fantastic, highly talented people and security doing all this really interesting security research. And then you kind of follow Bugtrack and you see, you know, Johnny from hotmail.com, security researcher extraordinaire who publishes some bug in a PHP bulletin board, you know, that probably gets used by him and his brother. And honestly, and it's, you know, it's like, geez, why send the friggin' thing to Bugtrack and waste all the electrons? Holler over the fence, hey Dave, fix your friggin' code. It's like it would be a whole lot faster. And I think a lot of it is, you know, it's like this 15 minutes of fame syndrome. And that's on a lot of the small stuff. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about the other stuff. One of the huge problems I see is a massive gap between what people will tell you have to do and what happens in the real world. So this is a beautiful, nice, clean architecture. Actually came from one of the vendors who produces web application firewalls. They have a lovely database at the back end. They have a lovely application server here. They have a nice little user interface so you can administer the application server, put their firewall at the top, and they put all their nice little respondents. Let me ask you a quick poll. How many people have an application in their environment that looks like that? Not a single person, right? Most of them look like this. It's the reality of life, right? It's like, sure, I can easily build solutions for the first one, because I can go, I'm going to place my chips on this thing, right? But in reality, it looks like this. This is actually a real one. And this is a genuinely real one, right? And that's what people have to figure out how to secure. That's the practicalities of life. So it's all very well if we say, okay, all you've got to do is put this piece here, and we're going to use Java messaging services for this, and we're going to do something else for that. In reality, these are the things that are running and things that are going to continue to run, and we have to learn to deal with them, and it's quite a problem. The ex-Anna Nicole Smith, I was told earlier, yes. I completely forgot. So this is the thing about context. You had a few beers, you're sat in the bar. How would you describe Anna Nicole Smith? No smutty answers. Any offers? Blonde. Bubbly, big, right? Blonde, bubbly, and big. It's a fantastic way to describe her. I think that's absolutely perfect. I'd also describe this as blonde, bubbly, and big. So it's all about context, isn't it? It's like, what's the context that you're describing it as being blonde, bubbly, and big? And I see a lot of people describe security requirements and the way that applications get built in the completely, utterly wrong context. Hopefully you describe Anna Nicole Smith in a different way from the lovely fat bastard. This absolutely utterly drives me insane. So I was going to talk here about PCI security, and I'll openly tell you what I was going to talk about, and I'll tell you kind of why I'm not doing it. So PCI has driven me mad for quite a long time. I think it's just fundamentally a flawed standard. And what I did is I built a web app. I actually took an intentionally broken web app. I refactored all the code. I reskinned it completely. I bought a nice, interesting URL to sell security books. I loaded all the content up with nice security books that you could buy online, including how to get PCI certified. I then paid $150 to a company who came along and certified the application for me as being secure. You could SQL inject the credit card database, trivially. So I basically proved, in my opinion, that PCI is fundamentally flawed because of the business model that's around it. The business model is you can get certified for $150. No one is going to be able to do a decent level of security review for $150. So if I think about, the whole industry is kind of now just spinning out of control about regulations and compliance stuff, right? And I kind of tried to break it down to myself. I was in Chicago 2 weeks ago. I was walking past this photocopying shop, and they had like this nice big photocopier in the window, and it's like, it's going to solve all your compliance needs. And it's like, what the fuck is that about? It's like, what are you going to do? You're going to photocopy all the audit reports? Is that what they mean? I mean, literally, I just couldn't figure the thing out. So I spent some time, and I was like trying to rationalize what does actually compliance mean. And I think I kind of came to these things. So, you've got government regulations, we've got industry standards, so government regulations, stuff that's law in the local country, industry regulations, maybe it's the PCI type stuff, and then you've got marketing FUD. And I think that a lot of the products right now that are being sold, and a lot of people unfortunately are putting compliance programs in, is to comply with marketing, and not to comply with security standards. And it's kind of interesting. I did some touch points and went out to people and I said, why are you doing this compliance activity? Oh, I don't know, so-and-so said I had to do it. Oh, okay, go talk to him. It turns out half of it is actually driven by FUD stuff, right? And everyone, I'm sure, has seen the fantastic Dilbert cartoon, right? You can't do compliance, you can't spell compliance without lions, which is spot on. For those people who are not cryptographers, I'm sure you can figure out the 5-letter acronym at the top. I think that the standard is kind of pretty much like this. It's like a goldfish swimming around with a great big shark's fin on its back. And here's an example. It's like they give you the choice of taking an application firewall or having a security code review. It's like the two things are not. It's not like comparing an apple and an orange. How can you possibly say you can have either or? They also, say that you should have your vulnerabilities organized by an organization that specializes in application security. My wife's an accountant, but she specializes in application security because she does the bills at home. Literally. I mean, what's the definition of a specialist in application security? There's no test for who it is. And I know of many people that have just staffed up companies in the States based with graduates to pick up all the money. It's a real serious problem. I always kind of find this kind of amusing. So they reference the OWASP guide and they say that, authorization, every access to everything should always be properly authorized. If you actually want to go and download the PCI standard, don't bother signing the EULA, just go directly to the URL. It violates the standard that you're about to use, but Did I actually say that? I think I did. This is from the OWASP guide as well. And what I often see, so people go, oh, it's great, we use the OWASP guide, it's brilliant. And I'm like, okay, did you read it? And they're like, yeah, I read it. It's like, okay, did you know about this? This is a piece in the OWASP guide. It basically says, preferably, the application should have the ability to phone home to check for newer versions and alert system administrators when newer versions are possible. If that's not possible, then highly clear on go phone home. So it's basically saying, you should put a backdoor into your applications. And then PCI is saying, you should then use the OWASP guide. So basically, anyone who runs credit cards should have a backdoor in according to the PCI. That seems ludicrous to me. So I can only account that people aren't actually reading this stuff, but they're just blindly implementing it, and I think that's a huge problem in the industry. Everyone's read Team America, right? I used to be able to do a good impression of him, but I haven't had enough beers. Everybody loves me. Security communities are fantastic. I mean, despite what I just said about OWASP, I think OWASP is brilliant. It's brilliant that all these communities get people together. It's absolutely fantastic. But you know, what's starting to happen now is that people are getting together for the wrong reasons. It's not to share information and to do great things. People are getting together to drive to sell technology. And there are vendors getting together under the guise of building communities, and that's not actually what's happening. You know, yesterday there was this secure programming community that got together, and when you look at the people that are on it, there was a guy that I used to know who's basically a marketing department guy who's representing a security company who's never had a corporate security job, is no technical background whatsoever, and works in the marketing department. And he is helping drive the secure programming standard. Why? It's absolutely and utterly crazy. And so I see these things happening all the time, and I can only kind of really think that these things are basically cartels, you know. They're not security councils. They use this wonderful term, the Security Council. And I guess kind of when I first thought, oh, that's a very official term, like I wonder who mandates them. You don't need to be anything to be a council, right? You can have Mark's Council. So I think, before I go through this bit, I make sure that I'm really clear in kind of what I'm saying here is that tools are fantastic. Human evolution is based on people creating tools, right? From spades to dig in the ground to whatever. But I also think that the way a lot of people view tools right now is fundamentally wrong. So, any ideas on what's going to be on the next slide? A free beer to whoever gets to the next slide. Who said what?
A brain.
A brain?
Yes.
Oh, you get a free beer. It is. It's the best security tool in the world, and absolutely everyone has it. You know, and a lot of people don't understand that and how powerful it is. In England, we have this phrase, like a fool with a tool is still a fool, and it's so true. The English we have what's called in America a potty mouth as well, right? So, does anyone know we have a bad phrase for someone? They call them a tool. So a tool with a tool is still a tool, right? But it's true, you know. So if someone takes a really detailed technical security tool and goes and produces a bunch of work and says, hey, you need to go fix these issues, unless they understand the output, it's just absolutely meaningless, and they become fools. And that's a classic example of like what happened with this PCI app that I did. All they did is basically took an automated web app scanning tool, run it against my website. I know because I captured all the traffic. I know exactly which tool they did. I know exactly what checks they did. It didn't flag any checks. They say, okay, you're secure. They were fools. And used for people who run tools. Thanks. So if anyone's ever been to China, you know, there's 280,000 graduates every single year who come out of school, highly qualified, highly trained, to get paid about $150 a month. You know, they're the people that are going to be running the tools in the future, right? It's not going to be highly skilled, highly trained people. That market's going to go away. It's the highly skilled interpretation of the information. You know, the people running the web app scanning tools, I think that stuff's going to go away. The intelligent interpretation of the like immunity debugger stuff, and the people who really know their stuff providing high value access, that's the stuff that's going to be great. And if we look at the stuff that's happening with offshoring, for instance, like tax accounting, you know, preparation of tax accounting now gets done in Bangalore. And so it should do. That doesn't mean to say accounting jobs are going to go away. Accounting jobs, the people who are doing tax planning and all the high tactile stuff, the highly skilled accountants, are going to be more valuable than ever, but they're going to offshore the grunt work. And I think the same thing is going to happen with tools.